Let's generate our motivation. When we contemplate our precious human life, we not only think of the conditions that we have now that make it such a fortunate basis for learning and practicing the Dharma, but we also contemplate how difficult it is to have such a life, that it necessitates creating a huge amount of virtuous karma in our previous lives. So virtuous karma, such as ethical conduct, so that we have an upper rebirth, and then practicing generosity, patience, and so on, so that we have the conditions to be able to make use of a human rebirth, because not all human beings have a precious human life. We need certain other cooperative causes to have the conditions so that we can meet the Dharma and hear the teachings and practice them. So it's very difficult to create all those causes. And then in the past, we need to have dedicated our merit to receive such a rebirth instead of dedicating our merit so that we can be healthy and rich. So whoever we were in many previous rebirths worked very hard to create the cause so we can have the present life. But we often don't realize that, and we take our present life for granted. We think it's going to last forever, so we can put off practicing, we can put off learning the Dharma. And so begins the compilation of 9,485,649 reasons why we can't attend teachings, why we can't get up in the morning to practice, why we can't come to retreats, and so on. So all those excuses are based on thinking that this transient life is somehow permanent and we're going to have this opportunity forever. And so if we don't feel like it today, we can put it off until tomorrow or next week or next month or a few years from now. So we need to really look carefully at what is going on in our mind and ask ourselves if what do we truly believe? What do we really think is of value in life? And are we spending our time living according to what we think is valuable? If we think compassion is valuable, are we practicing it? Are we generating it regularly in our lives? If we think wisdom is valuable, do we turn our mind to the nature of reality and familiarize ourselves with it repeatedly? So this isn't meant as something harsh. It's so that we can make sure that we're living in accordance with our priorities and our values that we have set for ourselves, that no one else has imposed on us. And so, since bodhicitta hopefully is a priority for all of us, let us generate it once again and make that our long-term purpose, and see listening to the teachings today and discussing them with others as a way to add more and more drops of virtue to the bucket of causes for full awakening. So I've been telling a lot of stories this time because I think that it's helpful to think about real situations that people have encountered and get an idea of how to practice, how to train the mind, how to see those different kinds of situations. Because then we get an idea of how you put Dharma into practice. Otherwise, we hear the teachings and they sound great, but we're not quite sure how to apply them. Yeah. So I think it's, since practice is all about applying the teachings, it's helpful when we're learning them to hopefully hear some stories about how people apply them. And so in the discussion groups that you have in the afternoon, you're hearing each other's stories and reflections as well, and I think that's quite helpful. Okay, so yesterday we talked about the three kinds of spiritual mentors. Yeah, the one who teaches you the four truths, who gives you refuge in the 5 precepts or monastic precepts. Now teaches you the monastic discipline or the Vinaya. Then and that's the fundamental vehicle teacher. Then the perfection vehicle teacher who teaches us the Bodhisattva path, the 6 perfections, and gives us the Bodhisattva ethical restraints. And then the Tantric master who gives empowerment and Tantric precepts and instructions on the sadhanas and so on. And so we see each of those 3 teachers in different ways. Okay, the Vinaya, or the Four Truths teacher, we see as a representative of the Buddha, as a preceptor, as a teacher, as an acharya. The perfection vehicle teachers we see as an emanation of the Buddha, and then our Tantric masters we see as the Buddha. Okay? But, as we also discussed yesterday, it's especially important to do this in our practice. If we look at our teacher as just some regular Joe Blow or Josephine Blow, then that's not going to be very inspiring and invigorating for our practice. But when we're working with our teacher on a practical matter, then it's fine to offer our ideas and discuss and so on. Okay. So the next section is on investigating a person's qualities. So here's when we're really taking the time to assess the qualities of different people to see if we want to take them as our spiritual mentors. In Tibetan Buddhism, we are allowed to have, it's not a question of allow or not, but we have many teachers, many spiritual mentors. There's usually some that we're closer to and some that we consult with for different areas of our life or different areas of our practice. But it's up to us to choose who our teachers are. Okay? So nobody comes along and says, I'm going to be your teacher and you're going to be my disciple. Okay, it's completely up to us. And so the responsibility, for choosing something to do proper research is on us too. And who you choose as a spiritual mentor is very important because it will influence not only your practice this life, but the karma you create, and thus what you will experience in future lives, and the opportunities and conditions you have to practice in future lives. So in this way, choosing your spiritual mentors is more, being clear about that is more important than figuring out who you're going to marry, And in the same way, because you can marry somebody, it's only for this lifetime, if we don't just kind of, hopefully, marry the first person we meet, or marry somebody after, we hear about love at first sight, but I wonder if it's more attachment at first sight. We get to know somebody before we enter into a long-term relationship with them, or we should, And so similarly, we should get to know different spiritual mentors and then select the ones that we feel are qualified, that inspire us in our practice. Okay? So just because somebody has the title spiritual mentor or Dharma teacher doesn't mean that they have to be your teacher. And just because somebody is your friend's teacher doesn't mean that they have to be your teacher. Okay? And similarly, just because somebody's your teacher doesn't mean your friend also have to have the same teacher. Okay? Because we all have different karmic links with different people from previous lives, and we all make it, the way the Dharma is presented by different teachers may, it comes across differently for different people. Okay, so there's a space in there, but we have to check out. Okay, so His Holiness says, if, like a spiritual mentor, the pilot of a plane is not well trained, traveling with him or her is risky, obviously. To help disciples assess the training of a potential spiritual mentor, the Buddha, so similarly, traveling along the path with a spiritual mentor that is not well trained is going to be risky. To help disciples assess the training of a potential spiritual mentor, the Buddha explained the qualities of the various types of spiritual teachers. Students are responsible for evaluating the qualifications of prospective teachers and choosing with whom they wish to form a mentor-disciple relationship. Sakya Pandita commented that people are very careful and diligently test the purity of jewels before purchasing them. Examining spiritual mentors and teachings is even more important than checking the quality of jewels, since we are seeking the truth that will lead us to lasting happiness. We should not run after spiritual mentors like dogs gobbling up meat. Instead of being impressed by titles and elaborate thrones, we must seek spiritual mentors who are learned and practice well. And so Sakya Pandita is one of the 5 great teachers in the Sakya lineage, And it's true, if you're going shopping for diamonds or jewels, you scrutinize everything very well, so that you don't wind up getting rhinestones instead, thinking that they're diamonds. So, we should check the teacher's qualities just as much. On the other hand, and this is something the Tibetans say quite quite often that we shouldn't run about after spiritual mentors like dogs chasing after meat. You know, just kind of, you run after them and you gobble them up and then bye, I'm done. You know, go off looking for something else. And then His Holiness often talks about not being impressed by titles and elaborate thrones, but really looking for people's qualities. So some people are naive and easily misled by charismatic teachers who claim to be spiritually realized. So I always tell people, if a teacher tells you that they are enlightened, hold on to your wallet. Okay? There are many people who proclaim realizations, and sometimes they, you know, I get publications by them or their disciples, and it's really rather strange, you know. Somebody who claims to be Maitreya, being Buddha, living in California, and you go to live there, and of course you give up all your wealth to Maitreya Buddha. And then there's Dorji Chong III in China, which is a bit strange. And so, you know, don't look for titles and proclamations of realizations. Look for people who live ethically, who can teach you the Dharma properly, and who you feel inspired by. Not people, you know, because what happens in these situations with Maitreya Buddha in California, Dorji Chong in China, is they are, for lack of a better word, jazzed up. You know, they're exaggerated or inflated, and then everybody's told that they have realizations, and you know, will grant you powers and this and that. And then people who want to worship a teacher rather than listen to the teachings and practice them are very attracted to that kind of person. You know, it's like, oh, my teacher is Buddha, and I just need to be near them, and yes, have all my money, and I am blessed. You know, so there's a certain kind of mentality like that, but it doesn't really get someone very far in terms of what actual spiritual practice involves, which is transforming our own mind. Yeah, so Buddhism is, you know, yes, we praise the Buddha, we take refuge in everything, but we're not just about worshiping. Okay, it's about transforming our mind, you know, and we are easily led by or misled by charismatic teachers. Okay, so when we'll go through here, and they'll list, you know, in I think it's Sutra Alankara, they list the qualities of a qualified perfection vehicle teacher. And charisma is not one of them. But what are we attracted to? Charisma. Yeah, and we're attracted to glitter. And we're attracted to, you know, showy things. But those are not necessarily indicative of a person who has qualities. Okay. Okay, so some people are naive and easily misled by charismatic teachers who claim to be spiritually realized. In the West, this may happen because Buddhism is new and people do not yet know the qualities to look for in good teachers. Difficulties arise in Asia too. Some years ago, a person from mainland China came to see me and said that a false Lama from Tibet had gone to China and claimed to be a Dharma king, but he was actually seeking money and sex. Blind to his true motivation, some Chinese were devoted to him. Similar things have happened in Mongolia as well. So to give you an example, one of my friends who is a Chinese nun and lives in Seattle at a Chinese temple, one Tibetan Lama came there and was teaching, and one of the lay disciples, started following that person, and I don't know if that person was lay or monastic. I'm not sure, but in any case, that person started saying to the lay person who was their disciple, "Oh, my friends or my family, they don't have much money. I would really like to bring them to America. They live in very poor conditions." And so the lay disciple gave money and gave more money and gave more money, which supposedly was going to this teacher's family, and until the disciple themselves ran into financial problems, okay, because they gave so much to this teacher, and then started having doubts, where is all this money really going? So that's the kind of thing, that can be avoided if we're very clear, and we know that, and His Holiness will say it later on, Dharma students are not responsible for supporting the family of the Dharma teacher, okay? And so, and actually if you're a teacher, and especially if you're a monastic teacher, if people give you donations because they have faith in the Dharma, it's not suitable to give those donations to friends and family. You should use them for other Dharma practitioners or for the monastery, the center, or so on. So you remember when Geshe Dado was here last month? He mentioned that, because that all the offerings that he gets, he uses for Dharma purposes, and he works for Emory University in their Tibet Science Collaborative Project, and the money that the university pays him is like a wage, okay, and that he will give to his family, because that was like a wage. But any offerings, he said, he received goes for Dharma purposes. So you can see he has, he's keeping quite good ethics that way, and so on. We had one friend in Singapore, and one Lama this one was a monastic, came and was asking for help to raise money for their monastery in Tibet. And so the disciples were giving money for the monastery in Tibet, and he said he would bring pictures of the monastery the next year when he came to Singapore. And the next year came, and he needed more money for the monastery in Tibet, but he had forgotten to bring pictures. And so they sent more donations to the monastery in Tibet, and then the next year came. The camera was broken, or, something. And then the disciples began to realize that something was a little bit fishy. Okay? So, so it's just a thing of, I don't want to make you suspicious of all spiritual mentors, but what I'm trying to say is be wise and investigate, In the same way, if you give to a charity in the U.S., I don't know about you, but I check on that charity. And I see, I look at the little sheet about how their donations are used, what proportion goes for what, and I'll see if it's an organization that has a good reputation and so on, and then I'll give a donation. So it's the same kind of thing. The Buddha would not have described in detail the qualifications for choosing suitable spiritual guides if simply having great faith in anyone called a teacher or lama were sufficient. Okay? So there it is. Having great faith is not sufficient. If it were, then it wouldn't really matter much who you had great faith in. Yeah? Because you weren't going to practice anyway. Although we may be attracted to a person who is charismatic, entertaining, or makes us feel good, these are not signs of having Dharma knowledge or spiritual attainments. Our spiritual teachers should be people we can rely on and trust, and who have correct knowledge of the Dharma and its practice. So here I always like telling the story of Geshe Yeshe Topten, one of my teachers, who he got his Geshe degree at Saramay Monastic University, and then he was a meditator up in the mountains above Dharamsala. And he just wanted to meditate, you know. And occasionally, no, actually, I didn't. Well, he was up in the mountains. I didn't see him down in town. But later, when he finished his retreat, he would come down and he would circumambulate around the His Holiness's palace in Namgyal Monastery, that whole complex there. And he was an old monk, and he had whiskers, you know, but he didn't shave them, just a few whiskers here and there sticking out. And his socks were always falling down, and his shemdap was hiked up a little bit, and it was always kind of old and dirty. And, you know, he just did his circumambulations, and nobody noticed it. They thought he was some old monk, you know. But he was really, you know, a strong meditator, and, you know, had his Geshe degree and was an excellent practitioner, and had a really pure motivation. When His Holiness the Dalai Lama asked him to go to Italy, he did not want to go. He didn't want to go be a great Geshe at a Dharma center. He wanted to stay and retreat. I was in Italy at the Dharma Center when he arrived, because you do what your teacher asks, and so he ended his retreat and went to Italy to teach. And we had a little villetta fixed up for him. We had bought china dishes, you know, because you want to do something nice for your teacher. So we had china dishes, and we made a nice throne for him, you know, a throne in the meditation hall. So he gets there. He had never been to the West before, okay? He walks into the villetta. We're trying to serve him lunch on these nice china dishes. And he looks at them and he says, "Get rid of these. Bring me plastic plates." Okay? His first teaching, he walks in the meditation hall. He takes the cushion off the throne and puts it on the floor and sits on it. Okay? So you can see this is somebody who's not being a big show-off, okay, to say the least. It's somebody that you would walk right past and not even notice, okay? But a very great practitioner. Jongla Rata Rinpoche, he's not one of my teachers, but I have a lot of admiration for him. His Holiness sent him to the West right after, the Tibetan diaspora, right after they fled from Tibet after the Communist Chinese occupation. And he was living in New York. Nobody knew who he was. Yeah? He had this incredible monastic education. He was recognized as an incarnate Lama. Nobody knew who he was. He sometimes sat on the street with a tin, hoping people would give him some money. Yeah. Then he got a job at Macy's packing boxes. You know, this is a great spiritual teacher. Nobody had a clue. He was extremely humble. Finally, somebody, I think one of the colleagues at Macy's, figured out something, and he began to teach in New York, and he's a very close disciple of His Holiness. So, yeah, these are the people that I think, that personally speaking, I admire, because you can see that they're not looking for worldly glory at all. Okay. We must investigate and examine a teacher thoroughly before deciding that he or she will be one of our teachers. Immediately accepting someone as our teacher without proper investigation is unwise. I recommend that people attend Dharma teachings and get to know the person, some prospective teacher, first. At this time, do not regard, when you're going to the Dharma center and hearing teachings, don't regard that person as your teacher, let alone as a Buddha. Consider the person as a Dharma friend who shares information with you. Observe his or her conduct in daily life and assess their understanding of the teachings as best as you can. Ask other students about the teacher's qualities and look at the qualities of those students to see if you want to become like them by following the same teacher. Okay, so that's important too. Who was it? One of you were telling me that in Boulder, Colorado, it was you, in Boulder, Colorado in the 70s, going there to one organization where the teacher was drinking and the students were drinking. This was a lay teacher. And she turned around and left. Okay? So you want to observe the conduct and assess their understanding. That same teacher became rather famous in the U.S. and had many disciples and did help many people. So it's very difficult in the end to assess what was going on. But some people definitely said, this is not the example of a spiritual teacher that is helpful for me in my practice. Okay. And then you look at the other disciples and see if you want to become like them. Yeah. So if the disciples are drinking, if they're sleeping around, if their behavior is just off the wall, then, if you follow that teacher, you're going to be hanging around those people and you're going to adopt their same behavior. So you have to check that out too. Don't expect the disciples to all be perfect. Yeah, followers of a teacher, why are they followers? Because they're trying to learn. Okay, so don't expect them to be perfect, but, just to, look at their attitude and their general behavior. And, if it's too much for you, then you know that, maybe that isn't the teacher that you want to follow who will encourage such qualities in you. But like I said, you can't always tell. Check if the teacher has a good relationship with his or her teachers. Yeah, so there's one group in the West now where the teacher just has kind of renounced the whole tradition, set up their own thing, and said that they are the true tradition. They don't have a good relationship with the monastery where they trained or with His Holiness. Okay? So that tells you something, about it. If somebody is speaking horribly about their own teacher, who is somebody who is well respected, then it's kind of, it's a red flag to look out for. Okay. In addition, read Dharma books so that you have a general knowledge of Buddhist tenets and can assess if this person's teachings are correct. Okay? So that's another thing. If you have a general knowledge of Dharma, you don't need to be real learned. But you know the four truths, you know some of the basic principles. Then if a teacher comes along and they start teaching some weird kind of thing, then you can say, gee, I haven't seen that in any of the Buddhist texts that I've read. And, so is this people teaching Buddhism, or are they teaching something they've made up themselves? After some time, if you see that this person teaches in accord with the Buddha Dharma, is reliable, knowledgeable, ethical, kind, and a good practitioner, then form a mentor-disciple relationship with them. So this is very wise advice. In observing many things over the years, I see that some people are really, they're trapped. I don't know what makes them operate or make the decisions they do. Just let me give you one example of it. When I lived in Seattle, there was another Buddhist teacher. I mean, there were several other Buddhist teachers there at the time. So there was one Western monk, and apparently he was drinking a lot, which is counter to our precepts. And one of the people who was attending the teachings I was giving was also going to his group, which is fine. You can study with more than one person. Anyway, she was attending his group. And one day the students found him blacked out on the sidewalk, totally drunk. Yeah. And so the student was telling me, about it, and said, we found him like that, and I really don't like the fact that he drinks, and the fact that you don't drink, and you're kind of sober. I really appreciate. But there's something about that, about those teachings, and I want to go back and study with him. So what can I say? But I just know for myself, I wouldn't want a teacher who gets so drunk that they black out on the side when they're lying on the sidewalk. For me, that wouldn't be a criteria I would look at. But somehow for this person, she could easily overlook that whole thing. I don't know what it was that actually attracted her to do that. But it was funny because she said she appreciates the kind of stability at the center where I was, and she would come in there. Many of you know her, actually. And but anyway, so it's just interesting, kind of what are people attracted to, and what will they tolerate. So the Buddha recommends that prospective disciples examine even the Buddha himself. Okay, so let alone teachers, he told people they should examine him. But how is an unawakened ordinary being who does not know the mind of another as it really is to investigate this? So the Buddha instructs us to first use empirical observation, watching the person's behavior, listening to his or her speech to see if defilements are present or if their speech and deeds are pure. Okay, so first you watch. Then examine how he or she handles the role of a teacher. Are they attracted to gaining respect and offerings, or do they have genuine compassion for their disciples and a sincere wish to guide them on the path? Okay. So that's a little bit harder to tell, but you can see something through their behavior and how they act and how they talk. Third, directly ask the teacher if he has eliminated observable faults and if he is accomplished in the Vinaya and the Dharma. Doing this assumes the person is neither deluded regarding his own practice nor lying. It is rather bold to ask a teacher this question, and most accomplished teachers will be hesitant to discuss their level of attainment. Okay, so like people go up to His Holiness Dalai Lama and say, "Are you really Chenrezig? Are you really the Buddha of compassion? Really? Will you bless me?" And His Holiness just says, "I'm an ordinary monk." Okay, so those teachers don't reveal their accomplishments. However, if we are satisfied so far by our investigation of the teacher, then we practice what he teaches and see the results for ourselves. If through diligent and correct practice we realize the result the teacher described, then we know with certainty through our own experience that they are a reliable spiritual mentor. Okay? So practice what they, you can ask somebody what the sources of their teachings are, what tradition they follow, who their teacher was. I really ask that and check that. Okay, and then you listen to the teachings, you see how it sounds, you judge their conduct for yourself, and if you have a good feeling for them, then you can take them as one of your teachers. Having 100 or even 1,000 qualified spiritual mentors is fine. But if teachers are not qualified, it is better not to have any, or to rely on Dharma texts until we meet qualified mentors. However, to receive monastic ordination or tantric empowerment, we must rely on a living person. We cannot receive these from a text or by ourselves. Since this is the case in these areas, you must wait until you find a qualified teacher. Okay. So if you want to become a monastic, you have to have a qualified monastic teacher who is alive, who has been ordained a certain number of years, and so on. To take refuge in the lay precepts, a lay teacher can also give that if they themselves have refuge and those precepts. You cannot give precepts that you don't have yourself. So the next section is qualities of a spiritual mentor. According to the 3 types of spiritual teachers, there are 3 sets of qualities to look for. So since the 3 teachers teach you different things, you see them in different ways, there's different qualities that you look for in each of the 3. So Shakyaprabha's 300 verses on the novice. So Shakyaprabha was one of the great Indian teachers on the monastic discipline. So he describes the qualities of a suitable Vinaya teacher. Okay? So these are the teachers who would teach you the 4 truths, give you refuge and precepts, and so on. Okay, so first, they keep good ethical conduct. 2, they have knowledge of what to practice and abandon on the path, as well as of the Vinaya rituals and procedures. Okay, so if it's somebody, teaching you the 5 precepts of the monastic precepts, they should know these very well. If it's someone teaching you the 4 truths, they should know how to counsel you about what to practice and what to abandon on the path. What is virtue? What is non-virtue? 3, they have compassion for the sick. 4, they have disciples who are gentle, kind, and wise. So they're disciples who've practiced with them for a while. You can see are calm and focused on their practice. They aren't like crazy all over the place, screaming across the yard and doing who knows what. Okay, 5, they provide their monastic disciples with requisites for living and Dharma teaching. So that's what I was talking about yesterday. When you take monastic disciples, then you have a commitment to provide them with room and board and teachings. Although, at least in the Tibetan tradition, not all teachers follow that. And then 6, being able to teach a Dharma topic at the right time to a disciple capable of benefiting from it. So that teacher has some sensitivity about what to teach somebody at what time so that that person can benefit from learning it. Okay? So in short, a fundamental vehicle teacher should have the following 3 qualities. Okay? This person is worthy of respect because he or she is self-disciplined and has refined behavior as a result of keeping the precepts purely and doing serious Dharma practice. Also, this person is willing to help disciples whenever required. Okay. And then 2, he or she has stable ethical conduct. For monastics, this means that the person has been fully ordained for at least 10 years. That's what is required in order to be the preceptor for an ordination. And 3, he or she is learned and wise, having profound knowledge of the 3 baskets of scriptures, so the Tripitaka, so Vinaya, Sutras, Abhidharma. Fundamental vehicles should also be disillusioned with cyclic existence and not seek worldly success or many possessions for themselves. Okay? So they should live a simple lifestyle, not be surrounded by lots of wealth and so on. They should also have strength to endure the difficulties involved in teaching and guiding disciples. Okay, so they're not going to get flabbergasted and fed up when things happen. Okay, so you can see that that's important. And, this thing about living a simple lifestyle I think is very important, especially for the teacher who teaches you the 4 truths and the basic precepts where, the emphasis in that level of practice is really having a simple lifestyle. So not somebody who has lots of personal wealth and, is spending it all over the place and so on and so forth. Okay? So that's talking about the teacher that teaches, the fundamental vehicle teacher. Okay? Now we're going on to the qualities of the perfection vehicle teacher. So the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, it is the Sutra Alamkara. Maitreya describes the 10 qualities of a fully qualified perfection vehicle mentor. Okay, so this is completely qualified, fully qualified. So there's 10 qualities. Okay, so this is a quotation from the Sutra Alamkara. Rely on a friend who is subdued, calm, and quiet, has more virtue, is energetic, learned in scripture, has realized suchness, is endowed with eloquence, has a compassionate nature, and ignores weariness. Okay, so those are the 10, and we'll get an explanation now. To present these qualities in an expanded way, a fully qualified perfection vehicle teacher, okay, so first, they're disciplined and subdued in their behavior. So in other words, the higher training in ethical conduct, you can see that they practice it. Okay, so their behavior, is disciplined and subdued. They don't have outrageous conduct and so on. Okay. Second, they have serenity and meditative experience. So the higher having the higher training in concentration. So somebody with that kind of experience can guide us to generate serenity as well. 3, they're pacified through developing wisdom. In other words, they've practiced the higher training of wisdom. So those are the 3 higher trainings. 4, they have more qualities than the student. That's kind of like, duh. But, we should make sure about that. Okay. 5, they're enthusiastic to practice the Dharma and to benefit others. So this is something they enjoy doing, they want to do. It's not like, oh God, I have to benefit these sentient beings. They're such a pain in the neck. That kind of person you don't want as your teacher. 6 is they're learned in the scriptures. So somebody who's studied, they know the teachings very well. Because in order to meditate, we have to learn the teachings first. And to learn the teachings, we have to hear them and study, under the guidance of somebody themselves who has heard and studied those teachings. Okay, so somebody who is learned in the scriptures. 7, they've realized the emptiness of all phenomena, not just the emptiness of the person. So this refers to having the correct view of selflessness. In other words, here that they've realized the Madhyamaka view of emptiness. 8, they're skillful in giving teachings, they're articulate, and they're able to explain the Dharma clearly. Okay, so you sit and listen, and they can give teachings, they can articulate, they can answer your questions, they can explain the teachings clearly without confusing everything and contradicting themselves and so on. Okay, 9, they're compassionate and always wishing to benefit others. So that's really important. We want, because it came up before that, a teacher should have, one of the purposes of finding a teacher is so that you can benefit from them and they will teach you properly. And so that teacher clearly has to have compassion and really care about the students. Not just like, not just, I guess, sometimes in a university or a school it could be like, okay, well, I got to teach. I don't like this job. I've got to earn my income somehow. So I'll teach 3rd grade again this year. But, you don't want that kind of attitude with a Dharma teacher. You want somebody who really cares and is compassionate. And then 10, someone who does not easily become tired or discouraged by expounding the Dharma to others. Okay? So this teacher knows a variety of teachings. They don't become tired, they don't become exhausted, and they don't become discouraged. Now, clearly, as your teachers age, they're not going to be able to teach as much, okay? So, if you have an 85-year-old teacher, don't say, well, he doesn't have this quality, and he's easily tired. But, what do you expect when your teacher's 85, okay? And you need somebody who doesn't get discouraged, because sometimes the disciples do not act so well. And then it's easy for the teachers just to, like, oh God, I can't deal with these people anymore, They aren't listening. They don't really care about the Dharma. Look what they're saying and doing. Forget it. Okay, so, you want a teacher who, to put it bluntly, is going to be able to put up with us while we somehow, work out all of our different crazinesses. Yeah. But don't go to your teacher and say, I chose you to be my teacher, so now you're obliged to put up with me. No, that's not what we say. If you say that, the teacher may say, very good, bye-bye. Yeah. Okay. So it is important for a Mahayana spiritual mentor to possess the first 3 qualities, the 3 higher trainings, because without having disciplined and subdued one's own body, speech, and mind, subduing those of others will be difficult. Okay? These 10, they talk about a fully qualified perfection vehicle teacher. It's very difficult to find somebody with all 10 of these. I mean, they're quite demanding. Okay. Someone may be able to discipline her own mind, but without other qualities, she will not be able to adequately guide others in the methods for transforming their minds. So we need the first 3 qualities to show that the teacher is someone who has practiced. But someone may have practiced, but without all the other qualities, it's going to be difficult for them to adequately guide a disciple. Okay? So thus, wide knowledge and understanding of the Mahayana teachings, as expressed in the 4th, 6th, and 7th qualities, are necessary. 4th quality is they have more qualities than the student. The 6th and 7th is they're learned in the scriptures and they've realized emptiness of all phenomena. Okay. Such a teacher has discerned the exact meaning of the Buddha's teachings by employing reasoning and scriptural quotations. She also has a broad knowledge and understanding of the path, which is necessary to lead sentient beings with a variety of dispositions and capabilities to awakening. So if a teacher only teaches one practice and they can't describe other things to do, then that's all you'll learn from that one teacher. Okay? And His Holiness, if you find me quoting His Holiness a lot, it's because I really treasure him. So just put up with it. Okay? But in my mind, you can't find anybody better to guide you. So, you want a teacher who knows different practices and can teach them. Otherwise, you just get one thing. And His Holiness often says that our mind is something that's very complicated, very complex. So we need more than one particular meditation technique or more than one particular teaching to learn how to manage all the different aspects of our mind. Okay. The remaining qualities, the 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. Okay, 5th is enthusiastic to practice the Dharma and benefit others, is skillful in giving teachings, articulate and able to explain the Dharma clearly, is compassionate, always wishing to benefit others, and does not easily become tired or discouraged by expounding the Dharma. Okay, so somebody with those qualities, that demonstrates that a spiritual teacher wishes to benefit others and has the ability to endure the hardships of guiding them. You may think, oh, teachers don't have any hardships. Everywhere they go, people are bowing, people are making offerings, they get china plates, they have all this stuff. What kind of hardships are they going through? I got to tell you, when I go to Russia at one retreat center where they have the retreats, I am continually floored because the set of dishes they have there, they look to me like exactly what came out of the Tsar's palace. And they're this painted china, they're china, and painted with gold paint, around the edge of the dish. And it's like, I just think of Geshe Topton every time I'm there. It's like, get this stuff away. It really looks like what the Tsar must have eaten from. It's so funny, going to a table set looks like that. Anyway, okay. Yeah, so a teacher who's willing to endure the hardships. Now, like I said, we may not think of the hardships of the teacher, but when I look at my teachers, okay, so, they came to the West um, out of compassion to teach us. I'm sure it would have been much easier to stay in India, in the monasteries, speak their own language, live in their own culture. Okay, it was poorer, but it's your own culture, your own language, you know how things function, you know, rather than to come to the West with all these people that are doing such weird things, you know. Yeah, especially nowadays. Of course, it's getting in the monasteries too, where everybody has smartphones. But, coming and, everybody is just kind of glued to this. So, and then having to travel around. Yeah, and you might think, oh, but traveling is so exciting. You get to go to new places. Yeah, it's really wonderful. You get jet lagged. You get sick. You don't know when to sleep. Your body digestion gets crazy. You don't know when you're supposed to wake up because, yeah. And so, I look at what my teachers have endured to come to teach here, or in the other places where I've lived. And then, of course, it's a different culture. And like I say, we go up to a teacher and we treat them in ways that their Tibetan disciples never would. A Tibetan would never go up to His Holiness and say, "Are you Chenrezig?" Yeah. And I just think what we used to do in the meditation courses in Kopan, we all kind of straggled up from Freak Street in Kathmandu, and yeah, Freak Street is where you got the dope, and got up there, and Lama, what do you think about getting stoned or dropping acid and then meditating? We would ask Lama that. I mean, none of his Tibetan disciples would ever say anything like that. Okay. So it's not so easy. I look at what many of my teachers put up with, get counseling different students, and then the students go out and do the exact opposite. Yeah. Especially, with His Holiness, because of Tibetan culture, he's highly regarded, so everybody's saying, yes, yes, I'll do whatever you say, I'll do whatever you say, yes, yes. And then they go out and they do the opposite. Yeah. So, teachers have to endure something, especially when they have lots and lots of students, especially students like us. The 10 qualities of an excellent spiritual mentor may be abbreviated in 3, okay? Because it's hard to find somebody with all 10, so you can abbreviate. So, but actually, the abbreviation contains all 10. So first, he or she should be learned and wise, disciplined, and have a kind heart. Okay? Their discipline should not prevent learnedness, and their learnedness should not lead to the neglect of discipline. Even if they have both learning and discipline, if they lack a kind heart, they will not be able to help others on a vast scale. So learning, discipline, kind heart, those are the 3. If they have a kind heart but lack learning and discipline, they will likewise be unable to lead others on the path. Thus, all 3 qualities are necessary. Although finding teachers with all 10 qualities fully developed may be difficult, try to find teachers with as many of those qualities as possible. follow teachers who have at least more good qualities than negative ones. Okay, that's kind of the bottom line. Yeah. So teachers who have more good qualities than negative ones are more interested in future lives than in this life, and teachers who consider others more important than themselves. Yeah, if you can find teachers with those three qualities, that's very good. The qualities of a suitable tantric master are explained in all 4 classes of Tantra. That person should have the qualities of a perfection vehicle spiritual mentor and have received empowerment into Vajrayana. In addition to keeping the tantric precepts and commitments purely, they should have studied the practices well, completed the appropriate retreats, and concluding fire puja, experienced some deep insight through this path. In the case of a highest yoga tantra guru, the person should optimally have some stability in, if not realization of, the completion stage. Okay? You may not know what this involves, but it's very high realization. Otherwise, seek a person who has ability in the generation stage practice. However, if they do not have the correct understanding of emptiness, their practice is lacking. For a tantric guru, the determination to be free from samsara and an understanding of emptiness that is complemented by bodhicitta is presupposed. So you want to make sure that that teacher has those qualities. Clearly, not everyone who recites tantric sadhanas is qualified to give empowerments and tantric instructions. In 50 verses of Relying on a Spiritual Master, Ashvaghosha describes the qualities of a Vajra master in detail. These will be explained in a later volume on Tantra. So we didn't put them here in this chapter because even if you read the list of qualities, if you're not familiar with Tantra, you can't even understand what qualities the teacher should have. Okay? In addition to determination to be free, bodhicitta, correct view, and so on. Do not be too quick to regard a person as your spiritual mentor. Rather, for however long it takes, 2 years, 5 years, or longer, regard this person as a spiritual friend. In the meantime, examine his or her behavior, attributes, and ways of teaching until you are confident of their integrity and their ability to guide you. In certain situations, a Dharma connection is automatically formed, and after that, you should regard that person as one of your spiritual mentors. So a person who gives you refuge, the 5 lay precepts, or monastic precepts becomes one of your Vinaya teachers. Those from whom you receive the bodhisattva ethical restraints become your perfection vehicle teachers. Because someone who gives you empowerment, tantric transmission, or tantric commentary becomes one of your Vajrayana masters. Okay, so here's the reflection. One by one, contemplate the qualities for a fundamental vehicle spiritual master, then the perfection vehicle spiritual master, and Vajrayana spiritual master, so that you know what those qualities are and you understand why those qualities are important to have. Okay, reflect on the purpose of the 3 sets of qualities and how each applies to the respective stage of development of the cycle. Okay, so why different qualities are necessary for that level of practice. And 3, make a determination to examine the qualities of prospective spiritual mentors and to choose them wisely. Okay. So we have a few minutes for Q&A.
So last night, during medicine meal, we were talking about the refuge that we recite as part of the um, preliminary recitations, Namo Guru Bhya, Namo Buddhaya. So I was saying, oh, what is this Namo Guru Bhya? Is this meaning that we're taking refuge in like a fourth jewel? And why is it there? And if you're like a beginner, how do you see that?
Okay. If you're a beginner, I would suggest just leave it and don't worry about it. It's not a fourth jewel of refuge. Rather, in Tantra, you see your tantric master as the embodiment of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay, so it's not a fourth jewel, but the embodiment of the three jewels. Okay, so that's for a tantric master. So we find that particularly in the tantric sadhanas, but like I said, tantra, in Tibet, because so many tantra is given so early very often, then speaking Namaguruvya, is also, you find it in just the regular Paramitayana teachings too. But it's not a fourth jewel of refuge. But and this involves Vajrayana practice, where you see the guru as the embodiment of the three jewels. But that involves really understanding how Vajrayana works, and to do that.
My early education in the Dharma,
Mm-hmm.
there was a culture of very much relating to teachers in a certain way, and within the context of kind of putting them very high and seeing them as a Buddha in that way. And so I kind of put that into my practice a little bit with teachers that I hadn't taken precepts from or vows from or anything. Like the refuge field where you imagine the teachers and things like that. And so then as I've learned more and become more clear, it's like, oh, that's not really so helpful, or it's not really necessary. But then I feel a bit awkward in some ways, is that I've kind of been viewing them in a certain way, and then to kind of retract that feels almost disrespectful. So I can see that, in thinking about it, I see that, well, it's just holding them, like as it says here, as a spiritual friend who has been important and who has been helpful. But it is still, I'm still changing how I have been seeing them.
Yeah.
So I can feel a bit of unease in myself.
You don't have to make a determination of, okay, now I'm not going to see them as a Buddha anymore. That isn't required. Okay. Yeah. It's so you don't have to deliberately downgrade them. Okay. Oh, I thought you were a Buddha, but now I learned some more, and I realized I don't have to see you that way. So you're just Joe Blow. No, so you don't have to do that, but you can respect them. You still respect them. You don't have a relationship with them as a spiritual mentor and disciple, but you aren't seeing those people now, are you? So it's kind of a mood issue. Yeah. If later you go back and you take teachings or empowerment or something, then you could have more of a you could have a mentor-disciple relationship with them. But now, if you don't, I think don't worry about it. But it reminds me, like His Holiness says, when you're when you're taking refuge or the Bodhisattva vows or whatever, you can imagine all the great practitioners from all the Buddhist traditions. Yeah. In the space in front when you do the ceremony. So clearly not all those people do you regard as a Buddha or think are highly realized beings. But they're in the tradition, they're realized masters, and they're people that you respect, and so you leave it like that.
And one other question with, in here it's quite specific that it's just taking refuge precepts or initiation that forms an official formal relationship. If taking along for a text or something, does that also?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it isn't that these things are the only way to form that relationship. I know with my teachers, I had no idea about anything when I started. I didn't even know there were different kinds of Buddhism. I didn't know the difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. I didn't know that you were supposed to screen your teachers and choose them. I didn't know anything, except what I did know is that what these people said helped me. Yeah. And yes, I did take refuge in precepts, but I had no idea at that time that was making that connection, And I never went to ask them, would you be my spiritual teacher? Which you can also do if you want. I never did that. I basically just kept showing up. And I think, my teachers and I both knew that there was this connection. There was, later I took the precepts and everything from them, but that was not at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. This is more to get your thoughts, because I would say that experience that you just described, even though for many of us who came later, it was the same deal.
Mm-hmm.
We showed up and
Yeah.
either the teacher worked, or for some people, tragically in some ways, the teacher didn't work. And this, I didn't discover this teaching, as most of us probably didn't, for a long time, and we didn't have the Lama
Yeah.
Chenmo then. So now I see that you and His Holiness have put it where you have in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But also just your thoughts and how, as the Dharma is spreading here, how that should be presented, not as seeing the teacher as the Buddha, which you get from reading the other Lamrim that we had, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, right?
Yeah.
Right. How would you see presenting that in a way that people could hear it early enough to make some informed choices before people get into trouble?
Read
Just
this
like
book.
this.
Yeah, just like this. Yeah.
This is volume 2, though.
Yeah. Well,
It's not volume 1.
Yes, but people need to be initially attracted to Buddhism. That's what volume 1 does. Okay. Volume 2, you're beginning to, act more on that. So hopefully people would read this.
I just want to say I had a very different experience of coming to the Dharma than what you or Venerable Chuni described. I had read a lot of books about Buddhism from all different traditions. I had been to all different kinds of centers. I was looking for the one right tradition. So it was easy for me to think, well, I don't need a teacher. I can figure it out on my own, and I have to be informed. So, like that consumer mentality. But that's just how things are with the explosion of information these days. And what I've had to learn is that it's not, you can learn a lot just by going around books even, but knowing how to practice and kind of how to interpret the knowledge, that's what you really need a teacher for. And that's something I didn't get until I came here. And then I still don't get it very much, honestly. Because I still think, no, I know what the Dharma is. I know what the teachings are.
Yeah.
But how to really practice, put it into practice, and then how to apply it. That's the part that you can't get without a teacher.
Yeah. And without a teacher, you can cherry pick. Yeah. It's like, okay, I like the precept not to kill, but I don't like the precept not to sleep around. Okay? So you can cherry pick when you don't have a teacher. Or, I like, I want to meditate on emptiness, but compassion is just too much, And so if you cherry pick, if you're guiding yourself, even you're reading good books, your practice isn't going to be a balanced practice. And so that's why, another reason why I think a connection with a living spiritual teacher is important.